Hey guys, I recently posted an update to my 2 Holopalm builds, and I saw some people asking, how is Holopalm a Leaguestart viable character? So I want to spend some time to show you guys how you can have an easy and successful Leaguestart making a Holopalm character. I recorded all of my footage on a fresh character, taking 3 snapshots of the gear at 3 different stages, which are all going to be linked below. The final version should be doable by day 3 or 4, and it can run T14s and 16s, as you'll see later in phase 3. I also took this opportunity to update my tree to be a little smoother leveling process, and all of this footage is not counting the new and easily accessible keystone precise techniques, which it's gonna be good. Phase 1 is to get through the axe with a stripped down version of a Holopalm build. This should sound familiar to you because you pretty much do this every league with your normal league starter. You should be fine as long as you follow a few key rules. Weapon upgrades. Make sure that you're using a vendor recipe for better weapons, which would be whatever regular weapon you're using. Blue or rare rustic sash. Rares will give you more % fizz, as well as a blacksmith whetstone. This will give you a blue % fizz weapon. Make sure to have the best available gem setup and know your alternate choices if you cannot get your best available gem setup. Like, for example, you're the Ice Crash build, which ideally wants primarily reds, but you're not going to find primarily reds because the game is just not giving you any, it's giving you all evasion. So what you can go with, you know that you're Ice Crash. What about Onslaught? That's a green you could put on. Maybe you could put on faster attacks, maybe some added cold damage. You know, it's only temporary. Your gems do not have to be perfect, and you can even put on blues if you're having it's a more blue, like Conk Effect. That's also very possible for you. You don't need the perfect gems right away. You just need to make sure that you have your 3s and 4 links on. Use your crafting bench. Make sure that your resists are capped and you keep your flasks upgraded. The goal of phase 1 is so that you can get through the axe and you can start farming up your maps quickly and getting in those Atlas passive points. But don't be afraid to spend a couple chaos on the things you need. By the end of phase 1, we should be out of axe, we should have our res balanced, we should be on a 4 link, and we should be working our way to a replica perfect form. Phase 2 is about getting our replica perfect form and a couple other items. I used historical data to price out the startup costs. The number one thing we want to get our hands on is a replica perfect form. Day 1, they start around 20C, and by day 2, they drop to about 10.8C. Until that comes up, though, we're going to look to buy a couple things that we can use now and for later. We're going to look for flasks. So some pretty cheap flasks are the Cat's Meow, Lion's Roar, and a Wise Oak. They're both great damage, one's good defense actually on both, and they're cheap. Better rares. So in this case, you're gonna want to prepare yourself with some life, some res, some dexterity, maybe even a frostbite ring. If you're going for a jewel, you're going to want to look for attack speed while dual wielding or area damage, as well as life, res, dex, whatever you need to get your hands on there. When that's covered, we're looking to buy martial artistry. This gives us more attack speed with unarmed and AoE, as well as a pure talent, another 1C jewel. And since we connect to the Scion wheel, we gain 25 all attributes, and since we're a ranger, we get the 7 move speed. So that's just a nice one to have. Plus, another great corrupt target if we're looking for corrupting blood, cannot be hindered, etc. Cyclopean Coil. This is something that we're only going to get after we acquire the replica perfect form because it is easy % attributes. It's not a bad corrupt target, and it looks like it tends to show up around day 2 of the league for about 18C. And in the meantime, you can just, again, get yourself a decent rare belt with some life, some res, and craft it on dexterity. With this gear, I was running comfortably T10s and slowly T12s on 3 ascents, but I was still wearing some pretty bad gear from Axe, and it very quickly scaled from there. I was also still manually casting my curse, so, I wish I took my own advice of buying a frostbite ring a little earlier. Phase 3 is the best phase. So your character should be wearing all the stuff from phase 2, and you've grinded out a bit of money. And with that, we're going to buy the rest of the base gear. Garrican's Flight. These are best in slot boots for hollow palm builds, and the earlier you can grab these, the better. And an Astramentus. So you can either buy an Astramentus outright for, let's say, 20 or 30C, but you can also go for the polymath cards, which seem to be the cheaper route. You'll want to get your one with nothing jewel. Now, for this, you can either go the cheap and day 1 available card route for the Brotherhood in Exile, or you can buy the jewel on trade, or you can farm it using your new Atlas passives, whichever you like to do. You definitely, at this point, would like to get some rare rings with some dexterity, frostbite on hit, life, and some res. You'll want to get your wild wrap. So we don't know how common they're going to be, but let me tell you that there's this Atlas passive that's 8 nodes away from the start called Fated Conflict. And it gives you 80% chance to drop Fated Uniques from unique bosses. So I feel wild wraps are going to be pretty cheapo. And it's more about getting the colors, which are going to take a little bit of effort since it's ideally 5 red, 1 green. There are multiple ways to get this. You can get it with Verici, you can get it with Harvest, or with Jeweler Recipe. For Phase 3 footage, I was wearing all the gear I spoke about in Phase 2, and I added on some Garokins and an Astramentus. I started with T14s at about, I'm not lying, 666 dexterity, and by the end, I was doing T16s with 850 dexterity at level 82. I hope this helps anybody who wants to play a hollow palm build at the start, but is a little worried that it can't be done smoothly. And I hope you guys all have an amazing league start.